Okay. So now, let's see.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words, create.
Watch the lower video.
By now, we are familiar with the main plotline of No, I'm Not a Human. The unnamed protagonist of the story lives in the suburbs, having a farmhouse who starts getting visited by different people and even strange characters. He needs to identify who is a real human and who is a doppelganger, or also known as a visitor.
I'm glad I didn't get that angry.
As a cataclysmic event causing the sun to have flares and overheat woke up strange entities who crawled out from under the ground. The sun flares has risen the outside temperatures to such high levels that going out during the day will almost guarantee third-degree burns and eventually lead to death. That is why so many strangers knock on the protagonist's door to get invited in to escape the heat outside. In the midst of all this, the government has initiated a cleanup mission and set up quarantine zones through setting up an organization known as FEMA to isolate suspected individuals and those who seemingly show symptoms of having caught a strange disease which would eventually lead them to become hostile as the entities from under the ground. In the full release game, the story begins as normal, except we get an intro of a conversation between the neighbor and the protagonist. The neighbor describes how he is coming back from a trip that he just had with his family and how his daughter is getting ready to start school. We get shots of the fictional town, which happens to have a beach, so it might have a sea or even a lake. This neighbor later comes to pay the protagonist a visit and to warn him about what he has heard so far about these strange entities known as visitors. He instructs the protagonist to be careful of who he lets in and to also make sure that he won't be alone, as there is a strange man who visits homes and kills people who are alone. Soon enough, the neighbor's daughter comes and they go back home. The protagonist then starts getting his first visitors, the tall man and the homeless lady. As usual, these guests can be tested by using a guideline from the national TV channels, reporting on the symptoms that the visitors could display. The first sign is having perfectly white teeth, and as such, the protagonist can test the first two guests based on this, asking to see their teeth and getting to know them and their backstories. This time around, we have a telephone as a new feature in the game. We can contact the neighbor to begin with and have a chat with him, and we can also dial a nearby shop which can deliver Energica and coffee to us, and some more items. These are essential items, as Energica allows the protagonist to ask more questions, filling up an energy level. Next to the telephone, we find a photo of a mysterious woman. Who could this woman be? Could it be an unknown family member to the protagonist, or even his wife? Well, according to what we learn later in the video, the protagonist has been estranged from his father and his family, and he lives a lonely life. So this could potentially be his sister or his mother. There's not much we know about his backstory, but it is a woman that he deeply cared about, who is not there anymore. As the night comes, the delivery man arrives. The deliveries exclusively take place at nighttime only, as otherwise the delivery person would get roasted under the heat of the sun. Even though there are visitors out on the loose, the poor delivery person has to still work, having one of the most dangerous jobs. As a couple of days pass, we come across the pale tall man who is standing outside of the house, just staring directly in the protagonist's direction, as if studying him and observing him, as if searching for his next victim. If you remember from the last videos I made, the tall pale man is seemingly a visitor who visits different people's houses and kills them. The only way to defend ourselves against him is through having people inside the house. Even though this entity is proven to be strong, capable of taking down an entire armed and combat-trained squad, for some strange reason, it doesn't attack people who are in a home with multiple others. At this point, this entity has already killed several people, with some corpses even being left outside, who are most likely the victims of this pale, tall man. On the next day, we uncover another way to test the people, being a sign of visitors. The sign is having dirt under the the fingernails, which is vague,
We
but
know
it is
all this
associated
stuff.
with visitors
Like, this
using
is-
their hands
none of it's
digging
like
themselves
lore.
out of the ground. Soon we will learn about more signs, which all happen to be very vague, which on their own can lead to distrust between real people, leading to violence, chaos, panic, and eventually murder of each other. As the TV reports itself, the violence and crimes has increased, correlated directly with the cataclysmic event. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or short for FEMA, has been funded by the government to supposedly protect the people and identify the visitors and dispose of them. The FEMA agents are dressed in full hazmat suits as a way to protect themselves against any contagion or diseases that the parasites might carry. In the midst of all this, con artists seem to try to take advantage of the
What?
vulnerable by offering their
So confused, 'cause
spiritual
we-
and religious services to paranoid and panicked people. On the radio, we hear how there is an organization spreading fear amongst people, telling them anyone can have the visitor's condition, such as dirt on their nails, white teeth, or red eyes, and anyone can be a visitor, manipulating people that even if they are not, they could be one. Doing so, they explain a spirit is inside them and they can offer their services if they call them, which of course would involve money. This displays the cruelty of humans and how some would take advantage of anyone in any circumstances. Calling the number that they provide on the telephone, we learn they go on a rant on how every single activity or every single action has some sort of deeper meaning related to the visitor spirit. At the end of each call, we are charged a consultation fee, calling these con artists who call themselves psychics. Anyway, as the day comes to an end and the night falls upon us, we get the first direct encounter with the terrifying pale tall man who has been seemingly observing us for a while. The menacing tone and taunting way that he asks questions runs shivers down the protagonist's spine, as in a mocking and rhetoric way, he asks if the protagonist's door is strong enough, as he needs one nowadays, and if he is home alone or not, as things are dangerous now. Even telling him that we have a gun, the tall man simply teases and taunts the protagonist even more, toying with him like a little child. That's when the pale man hears whispers and his smile gets wiped from his face. He confirms it's the protagonist's lucky day and leaves with a taunting message that he doesn't know how long these guests will stay in the house. Not much later, a mysterious man with a backpack, who is also referred to as a prophet, appears to tell the protagonist to let the cat into the house, as it will help the protagonist with the events that will soon follow. He doesn't say anything else and then leaves. Who could this cat be, and what is the significance of it? We might learn about it later in the story. Looking outside the window,
already
the
know.
FEMA agents and
We got the
armed
cat,
military
'cause
squad are roaming
they
outside,
opened
taking
the-
soil samples
the
and
bunker.
watching the area. As the
And we needed
protagonist
that
goes to
bunker at the
bed,
end, so he was right.
I'm Sora 2, the new AI in town.
Haha, we're not afraid. Artless got them all.
a new day starts. Listening to the radio again, this time around, we learn about a conspiracy channel who had invited a scientist to talk about the visitors and their legitimacy. But just before he arrives, they learn he has disappeared and all his documents have been stolen. If anything, this seems to identify the government might not be fully honest with us and the real story of visitors or who they really are. Whatever is going on is not the full picture, and there are mysteries and secrets we don't know.
Bro, literally half of this stuff, like, I already know. Like, we uncovered this when we played the game. Like, most of this stuff we already know. He's just going over it. It doesn't make any sense. I thought this was going to be like lore. You know what I mean? Like, backgrounds of people, like, stuff like that. I don't know. I'll keep watching though.
About as of yet. We then meet a new interesting character who has a deep story about him. He is always seen as being cheerful and happy,
I killed
always
this guy,
there
I
to
think.
encourage us positively. Although he seems cheerful when seen on his own, he looks sad and as if struggling with a memory. When talking to him, he explains that he learned that he needs to be cheerful and kind in life, as he used to be at times angry and rude. One specific experience made him reflect on his actions. He talks about a person that he lashed out on, someone who tried to help him, which ended badly with the person being gone now, or in other words, dead. He doesn't expand on the story anymore, but through how he talks, talking about a male at first as he addresses them as a he, and then quickly changes to the pronoun to she, we learn this character loved a man whom he pushed away, regretting it deeply till now. This man is hurt and seems to be trying to atone for his mistakes by taking a different route in life. There's also a new feature in the game where we can check ourselves for signs of being or becoming a visitor. The mystery here is if the government is reporting the visitors are non-human entities that have come out from under the ground. How come we are also being told anyone can become a visitor as if it is a contagious disease? Is it possible the visitors can infect real humans and make them become like themselves? Or is it a complete lie orchestrated by the government? Talking about his concerns with the neighbor confirms something is fishy about FEMA and the entire situation. He explains that one night they showed up and randomly selected a person and took away with them. They didn't explain themselves and simply left. The neighbor suspects the government and FEMA and explains all the signs they have shared publicly on how to identify the visitors are all normal human traits, and there is nothing people really know about FEMA. It all seems like a big conspiracy. A big lie about something the government is hiding from us. The neighbor, knowing the situation is dire with the son, the visitors, and FEMA, asks the protagonist to take care of his daughter if anything would happen to him, as his daughter is what he loves the most in this world. Unfortunately, we already know what will happen, and we will have to keep our promise to honor the neighbor. As the night comes, the unthinkable happens. Our neighbor is killed by the very people that he took in to shelter. His crying daughter knocks on the door and begs to be let in as her father has died. His house has become engulfed in fire by those people who killed him, and now we have to keep our promise and let his daughter in. Poor thing can barely talk and stutters. We comfort her and let her in, telling her everything will be alright. Feeling horrible for what has happened to her, we get another knock on the door. That's when we look through the people and see a lady holding a Persian cat, asking in a bizarre manner if we are open or not, as if we are a coffee shop. Letting the cat in, there doesn't seem to be any other knocks on the door for tonight. Looking outside the window, we see the armed squad being brutally plowed down by the pale tall man who is menacingly holding the head of one of them. This portrays his power and strength, who at this point is fixated on the protagonist's house and taunting him every single night, waiting for him to be alone. It's a little bizarre if this man is capable of taking down professionally trained armed military, why he can't deal with a few people in the house and only comes in if the house owner is alone. Could there be a curse stopping him from doing so? As the protagonist sleeps the night, the morning news on TV report on how the visitor phenomenon could be infectious, confirming that anyone can become a visitor, having the symptoms shared with public. Talking with the kind man again, he reveals that his partner has died, as he left the house after an argument and came back to see him dead in a burned down house. This tragic memory stayed with him, and now he wants to learn from it and be kind to others, as one can never know when it'll be the end of their life. Trying to talk to the neighbor's daughter, it's clear that she's still grieving and badly hurt, so the protagonist gives her some more time and space. On the radio, we get the number of a new service, which happens to be called Phone Roulette, where we get connected to random people to talk to. The person we get connected to on the Phone Roulette service explains that she traveled to a cold place where she heard about the cataclysm, which confirms that there are cold places out there still, and by the way that they describe it, saying nothing grows and it's rocky, they could be describing Iceland. She then continues that she wanted her best friend to go with her, but something happened, and when the cataclysm happened worldwide, they banned all flights and travels, which ended up separating the two for good. She then confesses that she loved him, and he probably loved her back, but neither of them confessed, which makes her regret it till now. Eventually, the protagonist starts opening up, someone who is very cagey. He describes himself as a lonely person who has no one. He had a really bad relationship with his father, and now his family is dead, and the house he is living in is the only thing left behind from them. By the sounds of it, they were estranged, never talking to each other until their death, which he seems to be remorseful of, just getting the house that they put under his name. Putting the phone down and contemplating about his past, the protagonist goes to bed and wakes up at night. That's when FEMA comes knocking and taking one more person. The person that he promised to keep safe, the daughter of the neighbor. being unable to do anything about it. He asks where the other person is that they took, with the hazmat suit guy at first being hesitant, but then explaining that there is a quarantine isolation period. After that, the person will be returned. But again, that's something quite doubtful, and something we will learn to be an absolute lie. As they leave, the protagonist is left with nothing but anger and resentment for them, wanting to do something so badly, but having his hands tied. Just then, we get another visit from the pale, tall man. This entity is a lot more democratic now and tries reason. He asks about the hazmat suit guy and tries to incite the protagonist to take actions into his own hands rather than letting them do what they want to.
Times are rough lately. Just one thing after another. Am I right? Should we take matters into our own hands? But you can't do anything. Can you ward off death? Can you stop flood, decay, and fires? All you can do is stop a heartbeat. Listen, are you alone? Why are you still scrambling to survive in this new world? Why? Dogs rule the world now, and only dogs survive here. You surely understand what I mean. There's no going back to the life you once knew. Next time we meet, things will be interesting.
Welcome to today,
I like that.
the day where you no longer have to see.
Just as he finishes his taunts and menacing message, he leaves, but being even more interested to prey on the protagonist now, wanting to even mentally break him down. Looking outside of the window, we see the FEMA agent cleaning up the site of the massacre. On the other side, a skull is left on a stake, seemingly a direct threat to the protagonist by the pale man. He seems to be fully invested in him now, and won't give up until he gets his hands on the protagonist. As the protagonist looks at the ruins of the neighbor's house, he watches a beautiful radiation on the sky, being the northern lights, clearly from the recent activities of the sun, displaying how severe they have become to be showing in these parts of the world. As the protagonist sleeps and wakes up in the morning, he turns the TV on to see another sign reported to identify the visitors. Taking photographs of them will display dark patches on the image, showing a dark aura around them. This is one of the only signs which could be considered as somewhat a legitimate way of identifying them, as other signs were all normal human traits. Anyone could have red eyes if they slept late, or rubbed their eyes, or even drank some coffee. Anyone could have shaven armpits and dirt under their nails, but having dark patches on a photograph could identify something paranormal. That is, if the camera is not faulty. The radio then reports on mass casualties and widespread fires, displaying how things are actually getting worse and worse. Soon the night comes when the protagonist has a bad feeling. Looking outside the peephole, he observes how the buildings in the distance have all been caught on fire and burning. This has caused so many people abandon their burning homes and roam the outside in search of a shelter, but it seems no one is letting them in. On the other side, the FEMA agents have started executing people and anyone who runs away from their inquisition. In the distance, where the neighbor's house once stood, a weeping woman is carrying the wounded body of her husband, who doesn't seem he will survive his injuries.
That was her.
Things are only getting worse, with people starting to lose their homes, panicking and turning on each other. The morning news then eventually shed some light on what the visitors could be after extensive studies. The government has discovered, or at least that's what they suggest, that visitors are not extraterrestrials or non-human entities as previously thought or believed, but instead, they are humans who have been exposed to an unknown biological agent which has caused them to become as such. So the tall, pale man outside is not an alien or supernatural being, but instead, he is a deranged, homicidal individual. Listening to the radio, independent sources report that FEMA is now shooting at anyone who is trying to leave, and people should stay home and away from the outskirts. Things are getting dire, and in the midst of the report, it is cut off, seemingly being discovered by the government and silenced as a result. When the day comes to an end, we get visited by a man who claims to have been a scientist working with
killed this
FEMA.
guy twice.
He has been fired after some discoveries.
Both
That
times.
it isn't the visitors people should be worried about, but what is inside of them, which is a brain parasite. He claims earplugs should be used to stop the spread. This discovery caused him to lose his job, and since then he doesn't trust FEMA. In the outside, we find an armed vigilante who is going house to house to kill anyone with any sign showing to be a visitor. He doesn't even double check. As long as they only have one sign, he starts shooting and killing them. The people that killed the neighbor happen to be people like this guy, who acts as vigilantes, not caring about the innocent people that they kill, calling themselves the so-called protectors. Sleeping the night, the news report on how a quarantine zone was attacked by an armed man, leading to some escaping. Then the channel seems to get hijacked, with some footage showing ear canal parasites who seem to be the culprits of turning people into visitors. So this in a way could prove and confirm that the visitors are the same humans who have been just simply infected. And simply it's the people's paranoia and mass hysteria that has turned them on each other, just because of a natural phenomenon and cataclysm, with the sun just overheating. Something that could probably just pass, but people's mind is turning against them and making everyone hostile, making the world an absolute chaos. The day then ends and we get more knocks. A FEMA agent comes and they don't hide what they are doing anymore. He simply says that he demands more test subjects. So it becomes clear that they are not taking people for testing, but instead they perform experiments on them. So is it the government who has intentionally placed these parasites in people's ears, or is it something that they are doing now to find a cure? The agent in a threatening manner says that the protagonist has no right to question him about the others that they took, and that they demand 2 more now. Of course, the protagonist has no say here, as otherwise he would get shot. Soon enough, we get a visit from the armed, deranged man who has killed people that he deemed to be visitors. He has decorated himself with a necklace of eyeballs, severed fingers, and pulled out teeth. He demands to test the protagonist for any sign of being a visitor. If any part of the protagonist matches the sign, he would go on a shootout against the protagonist, with both of them ending up dead. This man has single-handedly purged many houses and towns, killing so many that he's suspected to be a visitor. People like him were the people that killed the neighbor in cold blood and made his child an orphan. This vigilante leaves us alone for now. We then meet a cult leader who has several members outside the house. They are performing some sort of ritual, setting up bonfires. And later on we learn what they are using these sticks and bonfires. They believe in death, and they believe that's the way to redemption. Looking outside the window, many people are being quarantined by FEMA, and some corpses have been put on a display as a taunting reminder for people trying to escape, or maybe for potential visitors. The protagonist ends the night by going to sleep to watch the news tomorrow morning. The news reports on how FEMA is supposedly helping out the survivors from the quarantine zone attack, and they are now housing them in the outskirts, using the houses of homeowners. This of course means that homeowners will be now forced to shelter strangers. A new identifier is then revealed, being Bleeding Gums. The news also reported about the new rising cults, mentioning that they are against the FEMA. So maybe after all, they would be some sort of help. With the world seemingly collapsing, FEMA and the government being one mysterious entity that is always on the hunt for new test subjects, the multiple cults that each worship something new and cause destruction and death, the armed vigilantes who take matters into their own hands and kill innocent and visitor alike altogether, the sun flares and the radiation which would burn anyone down to a crisp, and the horrifying visitors, who we don't really know much about, whether they actually crawled up from beneath the ground or if a brain parasite caused them to become hostile. The cat the protagonist let in pulls the rug from the house, revealing a hatch door. So, could this be our actual redemption? In there, while having some reserve food, we discover a half-dug hole. Continuing to fully dig it out, we come across a meticulous tunnel system which leads to a half-collapsed passage with a man barely being visible on the other side. He explains he alongside some of his friends dug beneath the ground in hopes of escaping the burning heat of the sun. That's when they came across this tunnel system which had already been dug before them. We eventually come across a mysterious hole which caused all sorts of anomalies.
What the
The compass
heck?
going crazy and the animals getting disoriented and running away from of the sun. So it's collapsively dig while hatch style. The cat the protagonist let in pulls the rug from the house, revealing a hatch door. So could this be our actual redemption? In there, while having some reserve food, we discover a half-dug hole. Continuing to fully dig it out, we come across a meticulous tunnel system which leads to a half-collapsed passage with a man barely being visible on the other side. He explains he alongside some of his friends dug beneath the ground in hopes of escaping the burning heat of the sun. That's when they came across this tunnel system which had already been dug before them. We eventually come across a mysterious hole which caused all sorts of anomalies. The compass going crazy and the animals getting disoriented and running away from it. Even one of the friends who went down never came back up. At this point, there's another person who is tied to a rope and has gone down. As we go to investigate, we drop down when we black out and come across an endless shallow water sea with a floating glowing object suspended in the air. This entity is calm and tranquil, telling the protagonist not to worry and that it is death. Revealing not much else, this being teleports the protagonist into an isolated place in a plentiful land. A grassland where everything can grow and a lonely house in the middle. As the protagonist enters, he starts feeling fear and loneliness, yet at the same time he feels calm and relaxed, and feeling like everything will be alright. As he enters the house, it feels like days, weeks, months, or even years have passed. The protagonist feels ease and calm, not remembering how he even got there, but he knows he met someone or something. He wishes to see them again, but there is no one and nothing, and the protagonist doesn't seem to need to eat or do anything. He feels tired of nothingness and doing nothing, yet he feels calm, not having anyone or no worries or stress. He then sleeps in the grass and he lives there for eternity. Not much is revealed if he died or if this deity-like being just simply teleported his consciousness to another realm. All we know is that he is in a place that he always wanted, to be alone, yet calm and happy at the same time. This is what he got, even though he felt alone anyway from before, losing connection with his father and family. Yet he isn't really remorseful here. If anything, it seems his feelings have been suppressed here, so he can be having an eternal peace. No fear, no stress, no thoughts, just calm. So in a way, you could say this is true happiness, and for him, this is a happy ending. Also, the tunnel system is a mystery on its own. So is it possible that so many people who actually dug this underground came back up after being exposed to this entity and they essentially became what we know as visitors, just losing their consciousness with something else automatically controlling their bodies, who become hostile? Well, there are a lot more endings in the game with a lot more secrets to uncover. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to stay tuned as I am making another video going over all the other endings and the...
What do y'all think? I didn't even know about that ending. I thought I got the best ending. It said the good ending on mine. I think he just died in that one, honestly. But that's a weird ending. But, alright, you two, go subscribe to the Twitch. It will be right here. Hold on. Wait, yeah, right here. Or, should be like, I think it should be like up here somewhere. Hold on, let me... It'll be like up there. Yeah, up there. It'll be up there. That's my Twitch, right?